Yes, sir. Good morning, board. Mr. Arza,
Present.
Mr. Dodd,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Finlayson,
Here.
Mr. Forson,
Here.
Mrs. Forsyth Abney,
Here.
Mr. Gabriel,
Here.
Mr. Gertis,
Here.
Dr. Longshore,
Here.
Mr. Morello. Mr. Morello has already reported in as ill, as I reported yesterday. Mr. McLean,
Here.
Chancellor Oliva. Chancellor Oliva has a Department of Education commitment today and will not be with us. Ms. Patrica,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Thomas,
Here.
Mr. Ward.
Here.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. I've got a couple announcements to make before we get into a welcome of our guests. We are videotaping this meeting, so we would like you to speak up into the microphones. It's not live, but it will be posted for member schools to be able to reference, or committees to be able to reference for discussion items. We are under a mask mandate in Alachua County, and I'm going to ask Mr. Ireland to explain that to the board, and yes.
Mask mandate in Alachua County that extends through, I guess, the end of this week, would require masks to be worn at all times indoors when there's more than 2 people. So we don't get the foul of the Alachua County folks.
All right, thank you. And also a new section, we've added a public comment time for comment on agenda items, and there is a form out in the lobby. If you would like to speak to any of our agenda items, you may feel free to do so. We are going to try to get to where it will be a regular opportunity for members of the public or the community to come in and discuss items on our agenda, but we would like you to fill out a form for public comment. Today, obviously, this is a new thing, so as the chair, I will take public comment forms after the start of the meeting today. With that, we have a lot of member school personnel here with us today, and we appreciate you being here. We don't have any control over this mask mandate, but we'll live with it. But I would like it if you would please introduce yourselves, and we're going to start over here with Lance.
Lance Robinson, Director of Athletics, Hillsborough County Public Schools.
Dan Talbot, Director of Athletics, Polk County Public Schools.
Valerie Miaris, District AD for the Palm Beach County School District.
Josh Wilson, FHSAA.com, so media.
Doug Patterson, Director of Athletics, Orange County Public Schools.
Good morning, Tammy Talley, Director of Athletics, Duval County Public Schools.
Good morning, John Spromolo, Coordinator of District Athletics, Clay County Schools.
Good morning, James Slayton, District AD, Sarasota County.
Buddy Collins, Orlando, Second One, more media.
Dave LaRosa, District Athletic Director, Lee County.
Al Summers, Public Liaison, Battery.
All right, very good. Thank you all for coming and being part of our meeting today. Our next item on the agenda is item D, the adoption of our agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Finlayson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Longshore. All right, there's a motion second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye, or I'm sorry, please raise your right hand. I forget we're doing hands here. Is there anyone opposed? Same sign. All right, that motion passes unanimously. We have adopted the agenda. We're going to move into item E, which is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Finlayson. Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gabriel to adopt the minutes of our meeting from June 7th and 8th. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Anyone opposed? All right, that motion also passes unanimously. We have approved the minutes. All right, is there any public comment? Do we have any forms as of this time filled out for any public comment? No. All right, very good. We're going to move to item F, our action items, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tomlin to discuss the public liaison advisory committee.
Good morning, board. You know Florida statute requires, and we can certainly comply with that, to have a public liaison advisory committee. That committee meets a number of times during the year. here at our office and also at various places around the state. On pages 26 and 27 are the members of this year's PLAC, and I would like to entertain a motion that this board ratify that membership for this coming school year. Please.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Finlayson, is there a second? Morrison, motion second to approve the ratification membership of the plaque. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Is there anyone opposed? Same sign, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda, I would like to invite to the podium Mr. Al Summers. Mr. Summers is one of our PLAC members. Here on staff, Ashton Mosley, you've heard Ashton's name a lot last night, as directing our Hall of Fame banquet, but Ashton, one of her tasks here also is to serve as the staff liaison to our PLAC. Mr. Summers has agreed to come in today and provide a brief report that will be submitted to the legislature later on this year. Mr. Summers, the floor is yours.
To the FHSAA Board of Directors, Mr. George Tomlin is the Director of the FHSAA. To the supporting FHSAA staff, officers, members, and their prospective position and guests. Also for those attending virtual Zoom or by conference call, good morning. My name is Al Summers and I am the sports official and president of the Mid-Florida Officials Association. But I stand before you, before the Board of Directors this morning, and for this meeting as a member of the Public Liaison Advisory Committee. The Public Liaison Advisory Committee consists of 18 members, which from various walks of life and positions in the great state of Florida. The Public Liaison Committee meets 4 times a year in conjunction with the Monday board meeting, with the exception of the June meeting. During the Public Liaison Advisory Committee meeting, the membership discussed the policies and procedures of the FHSAA as they relate to high school activities and competitive programs. The Public Liaison Advisory Committee also reviewed the correspondence received from members of the general public. I present to you the Public Liaison Advisory Committee annual report, which is in your packet, which summarizes the communications of our committee received throughout the year 2020 to 2021 school year. Pending and after your review, after the Board of Directors' approval, this report will be sent to the Florida Administration for review. Any questions that I may answer? If not, this concludes the annual report of the Public Liaison Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere, Mr. Summers. We want to thank you for your service to the PLAC, and to make it this official, I'd like to entertain a motion that this board ratify this report, and then if that motion goes forward, we'll have a discussion and ask Mr. Summers if there are any questions. So I entertain a motion that we approve of the report.
So moved. Motion by Mr. Trina, second by Mr. Gervis to approve this annual report. Is there any other discussion or questions?
Come on, don't let Al off this.
You can let me off this.
All right, seeing no discussion, questions, Mr. Finlayson.
I just want to say I really appreciate the format. It was very easy to digest and comprehend, so thank you to your committee for your valuable work to the association.
Thanks. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Is there anyone opposed? Mr. Arza? You're in favor? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming today. Okay, we're gonna move to, next item is F3, the report of the Finance Committee. Ms. Patrica.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you. I'm going to start by making a motion to approve the 2021 annual financial report, which passed our committee unanimously. And I'm going to turn it over to Randy for some explanation, but I want everyone to understand that staff made a lot of cuts last year in order to accommodate any potential unexpected COVID expenses. And in addition, bottom line, what you're going to see is very, very healthy reserves, because our finances are in very good hands as I turn it over to Ms. Waters for explanation. Thank
All
you.
right, we have a motion, you made a motion, right, Mr. Finley?
Yes.
You made a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second by Mr. Finley, since we had discussion with Ms. Waters, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Triga. I'm really excited for this year to work with this new board and the finance committee. We had a great discussion yesterday. Your pages are full of numbers, pages, I believe it's 2 through 15 are full of numbers. So I am going to help simplify that review process. And the first review we're going to do is of the annual financial report for the 2020-21 financial fiscal year. This is referring to pages 3 through 8 of your board packet. Here we go. So the first part of this review, is we're gonna look at the revenues, the actual revenues that came into the association, budget versus actual. The revenue budget we set at $5,384,565. Actual revenues came in at $5,481,363 for a revenue surplus against the budget of $96,798. I'll try to remind you that because of COVID, on the revenue budget side, going into last fall, we knew that capacity was going to be limited at our state events, at our state series, at all sporting events. So we thought they were, limiting to 25%. So we're going to go ahead and cut our revenue budgets for fall sporting events by 75%. That although corporate partnerships grew and attained almost $380,000 more than we anticipated, the sport events yielded $170,000 less than we budgeted, and officials registrations were down $144,000. A breakdown of those revenues in a pie chart is athletic competitions at $1.6 million, or 29%, and corporate sponsorships at $2.5 million at 40%. The usual and customary percent breakup there is around 35 for athletics and 40 for sponsorships, or 40 and 40 to be, sometimes can fluctuate there. We've got, let's see closer here. On education and training services, $315,000, or 6% of the budget, or revenues, I'm sorry, and the Paycheck Protection Program, that was something we had to record as revenue this year. It was a liability last year, but we didn't know at the time that it was going to be forgiven, so it had to be a liability at the end of 2020, and in 2020, December 2020, it was forgiven, and so we had to report it as revenue in 2021. That makes up 8% of our revenues. Fees, dues, and legal share make up 6%, corrective action fines make up 3%, and interest income makes up 2%. Now looking at our review of the expenses for 2021, actual, we expensed a budget of $5,766,133. Our actual expenses ended up being $5,151,825. $5,151,825, sorry. For an expense avoidance of $614,000. I'll also try to remind you that when we set this budget last year, we were also thinking about COVID expenses, and so we increased the fall sports expense budget by 25%. Fortunately, we only expensed 89% of what was budgeted. Part of that was due to less travel, fewer in-person meetings, reduced team payouts for state finals due to low profits at those events, and an overall effort by the staff to spend less money. The breakdown of those expenses, you can see in athletics and competitions, we were at $1.8 million expensed, or 36%, and in the different various departments, then it's broken down between 16 and 3%. Those expenses those percentages fall similar to all other prior years. Now, if we review the net income, looking at the revenues over expenses, our total revenues were $5,481,363. Our total expenses were $5,151,825. For on paper, it shows a net income of $329,538. Now, what I want to remind you, in that number of the $329,000 was the accounting entry for the forgiveness of that loan. It was not revenue this year, it was not operating revenue. So if we subtract out that loan forgiveness of $452,300, our actual operations, we had an operating net loss of $122,762. Looking at the land corporation for fiscal year 2021, we budgeted $120,000 in revenues and only brought in $60,000. That was a conscious effort to reserve cash in the general fund. As you're aware, the land corporation is established to provide separate accounting for our assets and our capitalized property. So the general fund transfers money over to the capital fund to pay for expenses. In that, our expense budget was set at $267,000. We only spent about a little over $212,000 for a net loss of $152,370. That loss, well, we have, the land corporation actually has a cash reserve funds to be able to handle those expenses in that account. So the $60,000 transferred over is sufficient to cover the expenses. As well, in that $152,000 of loss is $100,000 in depreciation, which is again accounting entry. We spent less money in fuel capital purchases this year due to COVID, and we need to reserve cash. If we combine those two financial positions of both the general fund and the land corporation, we had combined assets of $8,700,461. That was almost $8 million in the general fund and almost $2 million in the capital fund. In that general fund, it includes $5.4 million of investment portfolio at June 30th. The combined liabilities for the two funds were $618,000. That was actually down to $452,000 because at the end of the prior year, we had to report that as a liability. It's no longer a liability, so it is down. The combined fund balance then at June 30th was $8,082,337, which was $6.1 million in the general fund and $1.9 million in the capital fund. Overall, the combined finances increased the fund balance by $585,953. Of that, the general fund increased $715,000 and the capital fund was down $129,000. I want to take a quick look at the actual fund balance of the general fund because there is policy in place that says our general fund needs to be operating anywhere from 75 to 150% of revenues. So the fund balance at July 1 was at $5,459,000. Once you add the revenues and the accruals, subtract the expenses and liabilities for the year, our fund balance ended at June 30th at $6,174,900. And this ends up being about 105% of revenues. In the history, looking back, we are fluctuating anywhere from 93% up to 105% in the last 5 years. So this is, we're hovering in the right range. A summary of the business operations then for 2021. And despite the COVID pandemic, the FHSAA's overall financial position is strong, with nearly $6.8 million in current assets at June 30th. Evaluation of the association's performance is positive and on target. With support from sponsors and receipt of the SBA loan, losses were minimized in the 2021 fiscal year. Given the effects of the pandemic, FHSAA was able to retain all staff and preserve the fund balance to adequately maintain business operations for the past year. Are there any questions with regards to the annual financial report?
I don't have a question as much as I have a comment. I want to remind the board that staff froze salaries last year, and that our executive director took a 20% pay cut, and that was voluntary. That wasn't the board making them do it. That was their commitment to our student athletes and their commitment to the association. So I'd like to recognize that as you talk about cuts, you didn't specifically talk about all of the people in the room who did the right thing for kids before us. Thank you.
Also not a question, but I just want to commend you and Mr. Common. I understand it took the entire staff for us to finish a very challenging year in a positive way financially, but I also understand there has to be a chief steward involved in that. So we really appreciate your work and efforts in regard to that.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion on the floor with a second, so we'll get ready to vote. Any other questions? I think you're not done yet. So.
I am not.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Anyone opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so we've approved our annual finance report. Thank you.
So I'd like to make another motion to approve the final budget for 2021-22, which passed our committee unanimously.
All right, again, this,
Hold on one second. Sir, we got a motion on the
sorry.
floor. Is there a second? Mr. Force has a second. So now Ms. Waters.
I thought I'd make a little bit of a joke. Mr. Tom always comes back around to me too, because he knows I have a lot more to say. So this is a summary of pages 9 through 13 of your board packet. Again, what you're seeing there is a lot of numbers and a lot of words, so I'm going to try to summarize this in the presentation here. This is the final budget proposal for this fiscal 2021-22. We initially set the tentative budget back in June of 2021 at revenues at $5,779,200 and the total expenses at $5,866,484 for a net loss of $87,284. The final budget that we are proposing is $5,912,182 in revenues and a total expenses of $5,995,785 or a net loss of $83,603. The change overall is an increase of $133,000 almost in revenues and $129,000 in expenses, an increase there. Although that bottom line didn't shift much, there were significant adjustments to the revenues and expenses that netted this little change. In talking about those adjustments to the tentative budget on the revenues that are up $133,000, we finalized sponsorships agreements since June, so we have that increased the budget in the revenue sources by $102,000. We determined the legal share and dues that will be coming into the association. That went increased the budget by $29,000. We added beach volleyball in June. At that time that I was presenting the tentative budget, we didn't know that might be a state rental. So we added $4,000 to the revenue side. And we recalculated the corrective action fines and reduced that by $2,000. Adjustments to the tentative budget with the expenses up $129,000. We recalculated salaries and benefits, which increased $47,000. We calculated athletic program costs, which went up $28,000. We recalculated officials pay, which went up $21,000. We recalculated legal expense, which went up about $10,000. And we determined the liability insurance premiums by this time between June and now, and that premiums went up by $23,000. Major items impacting the final budget are the COVID pandemic and us adjusting back to normal. If you recall the final budget, I apologize, one step back. The final budget assumes normal business operations will resume this year. We used a 3-year average of pre-pandemic budgets to come up with a tentative budget initially, and then we adjusted other known factors such as corporate sponsorships, legal share and membership dues, liability insurance premiums, salaries and benefits, game officials' pay increase, state series formats and levels of pay, and added sport events. A breakdown of the final budget of revenues at $5,912,182 shows that we're anticipating $2.5 million in athletic competitions, or 42%, $2.5 million in corporate sponsorships, or 42%. Education and training services at $463,000, or 8%. Fees, dues, and legal shares is at $275,000, or 5%. And corrective action fines at $126,000, or 2%, and interest income at 1%, $60,000 of our budget projected. Our budgeted expenses on the pie chart, athletic services being expensed out the most at $2.1 million, or 35% of the budget. And then the various departments at their percentages. Again, these are falling within the normal percentages of our budget and usual and customary range of actual operations. Any questions on the final budget proposal?
Again, not a question, a statement. Each time that I come to the board table, I'm finding more and more detail, not just in the word packet, but in the presentations that you're giving, making it, I think, a lot easier for all of us to have a clear picture of what's going on. So I appreciate that. And I'd like to let the board know that we're looking at some potential budget amendments in November to include exit expenses associated with Mr. Thomas' retirement and transition costs, to include advertising for the new position, that kind of thing. I believe you're going to have a search committee coming together, and they will be in a better position to estimate what those costs will be. So we're going to leave the budget as it is now, with an eye toward a potential amendment in November at some point in the future. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Other comments?
No, I don't know.
Well, I do have a question.
Okay.
We're seeing our corporate sponsors continue to grow, which is a great thing. So I know we're talking about $2.5 million budgeted for corporate sponsors. So can you share with the board a little bit about those corporate sponsors?
Yes. Yes, longtime corporate sponsors. I'm going to just have off the top of my head, Wilson as a big sponsor. Gold Fan TV is another big one. We've got the FHS Network. We've got Spectrum Television. I'm going to keep going. Gatorade. This is Florida Dairy Farmers. Thank you. Even when my boss is like, I wouldn't want to minimize anybody's contribution. I could keep going down that list, and hospital for special surgeries, I believe. That's one. Nike, this year we're getting Army ROTC. We're getting with the Ocala's. I apologize. Thank you. And part of that is not necessarily sponsors as much as they want to market. They want to market for us, and they're willing to say we want to be able to offer our advertising and everything. All right. Jamie, is there someone I should mention that I'm not mentioning?
No, I mean, we're just continuing to grow sponsorships. We're in a good spot with our sponsorships. We have all the same sponsors plus more to bring.
In that department that oversees those contracts and getting those sponsors, Jamie's site, Clinton, she's here, she's not here today. And it's the effort of all the staff. There's other staff that are talking and bringing those types of sponsorships in, so they're doing a great job.
Yes, they are. Mr. Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Rohr, and your department, because that's a huge part of us winding up in such a good financial position. Thank you for your efforts in naming those off the cuff. It's great when we're listed in partnerships to feel like we're at the victory lane of a NASCAR race to have that many things we're trying to list. I was wondering if it would be appropriate just for us to have a list of who those are, not amounts. Like you said, we don't want to minimize anyone's contribution, but then if we were ever looking to secure an equestrian center, we might look at one that's supporting us so that we could support them. I just think it would be helpful for us to at least know who those sponsors are that make us so successful financially.
Yes. Maybe something like that.
Any other questions or comments?
I think that's a good comment. I would say that this association, this Florida athletic here in Florida, is I would say they're topping all the other state associations in this regard. So in my CFO meetings with other state associations, their corporate partnerships and sponsorships come in around 15, 20% of their revenue sources. So the efforts of this association and the staff are tremendous.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the budget for the fiscal year 2021-22, please raise your right hand. Okay, at this time, I will recess the general business meeting and convene the meeting of the FHSAA Land Corporation.
Make a motion to approve the Land Corporation final budget for 2021-22, which passed our committee unanimously.
Motion, is there a second? Thomas is seconded the motion, and it's all yours.
Thank you. Again, this is a summary of what is on really just page 15. 14 is the header page on that, and page 15 has the actual numbers. But the FHSAA's Land Corporation is established by separate accounting for the purchase of large capital items and the maintenance of capitalized property. The review of the tentative versus the final budget did not change much, $4,800 in the expense side of it. Again, we're also suggesting that we only bring in $5,000 a month from the general fund to the land corps. It is sufficient to sustain the expenses of $275,500 that we're projecting for a net loss of $215,000 in that. And net revenues are derived from the general fund too. The major items impacting the final proposed budget are the capitalized assets and depreciation for building, equipment, computer hardware and software, as well as utilities, building maintenance, janitorial services, care, things like that. Notice the Land Corporation keeps an unreserved cash balance for future capital needs. I believe in the balance sheet back on page probably 8, it indicates I think it's right around 164,000 after June 30th. That is on the Land Corporation proposal for the final budget.
All right, questions, Waters? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to vote on the motion to approve the final budget for land for all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Waters, thank you very much. And I would like to thank, hold on, I'm going to adjourn the meeting of FHSAA Land Corps and reconvene the general business meeting. I want to thank Mrs. Trita and the Finance Committee with Dr. Lonnie Stewart, Marcus Gabriel, Dick Leva, and Ryan Smith. Okay.
The first is we have a very brief discussion regarding the strategic plan, but that is item L on our agenda tonight, so I'll hold my comments on that. And finally, we are looking at a policy update for investment. We have asked Ms. Waters to get with staff and bring forth recommendations for our next meeting. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
on item 4, the report of the governance committee. Thank you, Mr. President. Those of us that were at the last meeting will recall we did all of our membership recommendations and approvals. There was one school, Grace Leadership in Miami Gardens. They had representation here and they were asking for an extension. They are under new leadership. And at this time, we are prepared to make a motion that Grace Leadership be admitted into the application period of membership. And Mr. Colasanti can explain the delay and how they have fulfilled that request by us.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Good morning, board.
I'm sorry, we need a second first. I'm sorry.
Thomas has seconded the motion.
Thank you. Good morning, board. Yes, as Mr. Curtis explained, the school, you as a board are to provide them with an extension on the application period of the application that they were submitting for membership, based on the fact that they would potentially lose a school year of not being in membership after they did not meet all the requirements to be moved in a full membership at the conclusion of last year. So, as Mr. Curtis explained, the school was represented here after the meeting in June, and you provided them an extension to June 30th to submit that application. They did so on time, and that's why they're here today. So, not personally here today, but still in this process.
Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously.
Okay, our next item, the executive director has recommended the appointments for the specified terms of individuals on the representative assembly. These are appointments, not elected positions. And our motion would be to accept the executive director's recommendation and approve all these appointments.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Thomas. All right, there's a motion to ratify these appointments. Is there any discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. That's unanimous vote.
Okay, Mr. Jameson, you may remain there, but Mr. President, the next item, the executive director has asked for, or has made a recommendation on 8 bylaw proposals. We are prepared to make a motion on all 8 together. However, I thought I might ask the other committees, since they discussed, if they have any items in these 8, among these 8, that they would like pulled for separate discussion.
I think that's a great idea. Board members, is there any board member that would like to have any of these policies pulled for discussion?
So,
Yes.
operations, just for clarification to make sure we're all clear in regard to the definition of transfer, which was 9.3.1. We wanted further discussion.
Okay.
That one, but that was the only one.
Okay. Any other discussion, any other of these board members would like to have discussed separately in a separate motion? Okay, so Mr. Gertz, I think you want to make a motion.
Yes, I would make a motion, and I don't know if you need me to list each of the other 7, but my motion would be that we co-sponsor 7 bylaw proposals by the executive director, the exception being 9.3.1.
All right. So the motion is to co-sponsor these 7 with the exception 9.3.1, which we'll pull for discussion. All right, that's the motion. Is there a second? Yes, thank you. Allison, second the motion. Discussion on these 7.
And again, Mr. Jameson is here to answer any questions you may have on any of these.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All right, that is unanimous. So we ask for a crazy vote. All right, we're going to pull 9.3.1 and tell us what page that's on to. 49.
49. And I guess to discuss, for the sake, I will make a motion that we also co-sponsor 9.3.1.
All right, we have a motion to co-sponsor 9.3.1. Is there a second? All right, second. Thank you, yes. All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Curtis, a second by Ms. Forsythe Abney to approve 9.6.1. Mr. Finlayson, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think you have a question on that.
Just it's a substance, a pretty significant it's a substantial change. That transfer definition used to be just something that happened during the school year. Now this would go to include all transfers or all changes of schools, whether they're during the school year, summer, or any other time. So just, I guess, asking staff just for some understanding of the reason that this would be a positive direction for the investigation.
Sure. With doing this, what we're trying to do is add some clarity to the definition of transfer. Previously, transfer was sort of an all-encompassing term and encompassed whenever a student changed schools. When the transfer regulations were put into state statute, we sort of created our own definition of transfer here to, at the time, add clarity to what a transfer was, but before starting a sport, after starting a sport. What we'd like to do to, again, help to clarify the position that we're at with transfers in the EL6, which was one of the 7 that was approved, was to say that a change in school is a transfer. A transfer encompasses everything at this point, which is the way that it was previously and the way that it was defined. And we believe that this will help when people say, oh, this kid transferred to our school. They don't have to say, well, when did they transfer? They transferred to your school and now you need to go an EL6 on them. So for our purposes, we're trying to get back and have it streamlined a little bit more as opposed to having 2 separate. So transfer and change of school is essentially the same thing, which is what we're trying to do with that definition. I hope that helps.
Any questions? Concerns? Lynch?
Yes. So we were, I guess, talking a little bit about transfer meaning what it is, what it used to be, and what everyone thinks it is. And we were just wondering, I know it's in the definition, but I wonder if there's any way that we could put change of school in the actual transfer name, like slash. Just to clarify that in the writing.
I'll look to Mr. Jameson and anyone else from that particular department to address that.
Well,
Tell us the history and what we've done over here, Scott.
so it's in the definition. That's what I would point to. It's transfer is defined as the transfer occurs when a student makes any changes in schools, period. So, I mean, I guess we could add it to the, I understand exactly what you're saying. I don't know if it's not clear with that definition, if it needs more clarity, it's something obviously we could explore, but our hope was that ending the definition there would help tie transfer and change of schools together as transfer being a change in school. That is the only definition of a transfer, is the change in school.
How would that look if it would be, put in the title for reference, or Scott, where would that feel if
That's a good question. We hadn't thought about that until it was brought up yesterday. Again, our thoughts were that by changing the definition to just have it say change in schools, that it tied the 2 together, but Mr. Dan?
And just to add to with transfers, because state statute refers to transfer, not change of school. And statute is just easy to have it listed as a transfer with change of schools listed in the definition, so it matches what's in the state statute. There's not a discrepancy between where change of school, the statute refers to it as a transfer.
So I would add, I think in the definition that we're defining transfer, but I think the clarity comes with anywhere else where it's talking about forms provided or anything. Transfer / change of school is where that would help clarify that in other sections such as 9.3.3.2 on the EL6. I think that's the area that we were looking at to provide more clarity. We understand that transfer equals change of schools, so provide help throughout the bylaws and policies to include both of those terms. Does that clarify?
So not necessarily for this one, but for.
I think, Mr. Ward, is that a fair summary? Yeah, you think that, okay. And we understand that would not be for this representative assembly, but that would be able to be done moving forward.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Smith. Hello, thank you, Ryan Smith. I have a question, Mr. Jameson. The EL6 now, I do get a lot of questions in my area about, it'll be required no matter, as soon as you start as school, your freshman year, required to transfer at any time, correct?
Yeah, so the EL6 is required, anytime a student comes from another school that was not at their terminal grade. So if a student is coming in, yes, during the summer, they come in 9th grade, they're at school in 8th grade, you would want to check to see their eligibility. Yes, sir, that is correct. Whether it's in the summer, fall, spring, during school, before school. Yeah, and that was one of the reasons we tried to help clarify the definition, and we will go through the book and help clarify. I think that's a good idea just to help bring that all together.
It's actually the point of emphasis to somehow communicate as a school. I know there's confusion in other sections.
And we did change the title, or we did adjust the title of EL6 to have transfer / change in school, which I think is the point that Mr. Finlayson and Mr. Ward are making, that it would help with clarity in the rest of the book as well. So that was one thing that we had considered, because we do get those calls. They say, well, they came in the summer, we don't need you to do the EL6. And we said, actually, you do. It's to help protect your school to do the EL6 as well. So yes, sir, I appreciate that point. And I think that is something that we will try to continue to educate and put out there.
Okay, so in reference to Mr. Finlayson and Mr. Ward, we're good on what your points are. We're not going to change the motion.
Not for my sake.
Okay.
I agree. Keep in mind, Ward, that you are not making that decision now. You are recommending or not recommending something to the representative assembly. So Mr. Curtis, I guess we'll look at you. You wish to proceed with the motion that you made to co-sponsor this as it was worded, and rely upon us to communicate with the representative assembly the appropriate philosophy and issues that you have.
Yeah, so I'm comfortable with it, and I want to thank you for expressing that clarification, that, because I should point that out, that we're not deciding anything today. We're just endorsing or not endorsing, recommending or not. And our committee to further clarify, ours was just to make sure everybody understood fully what the issue was there.
Okay. Ms. Jensen, do you have anything else? We're going to vote on this motion. No, that's it. Okay. All right, we're going to vote on the motion. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. There is no opposition. Okay, very good. We're going to go to item G now, and that's still.
Yes, there is one proposal from a member school, and the executive director has recommended that this not be approved by the representative assembly. So our motion would be that we would endorse the executive director's recommendation.
And that, okay, and that basically means we're not going to co-sponsor, we're not going to recommend.
We're endorsing the position that it should not be approved.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Thomas. Okay, so the motion here is to follow the recommended action of the executive director in reference to a proposed bylaw. Is there any discussion on this? Or Mr. Jameson, do you want to talk about this at all?
Sure, if the board would like, absolutely, I can discuss this if you guys would like. Basically, this was brought forward by a school, and the idea is that one of the types of non-traditional students that we have, as you know, we have 5 different types of non-traditional students. Type 3, as we would refer to it, is special / alternative school students. Every special and alternative school is a district-operated public school. They have to be, state statute states that special school, bylaw, I should say, it's a special school that are actually registered with our association. Our county athletic directors do a great job getting us that information on which schools are approved, which schools are not. And again, they are all district-operated public schools, as are the alternative schools. So the thought was because of that, that the idea of them participating at a private school is not something that the executive director wished to endorse. They do have opportunities as special alternative school students to participate for their home zone public school, a public school they can get into through choice, or at a charter school that would accept them for participation. So they do have opportunities. Okay. Any other discussion?
Okay, seeing none, our vote is to follow the executive director's recommendation and not endorse this bylaw as submitted. So all those in favor of that motion, please raise your right hand. That's unanimous. The motion passes as we will not endorse this. Okay, Mr. Curtis, do you have anything else?
We did have two discussion items on our agenda. One, as Mr. Patricia said, was on strategic planning. We did have a brief conversation on that. We discussed more length if that's something that we take on as a whole group. And then we also did have discussion on Mr. McLean's discussion item on bylaw 2.8. That too was a minimal discussion. There were mainly concerns that it would be inconsistent with county to county. It's a bigger issue in some counties than in others. Perhaps will be further discussion on that. So that was a minimal discussion as well.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. I want to thank the governance committee, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Forson, Mr. Arza, Mrs. Forsythe Abney, and Mr. Thomas. Appreciate your work on that committee. All right, we're going to go to item number 5, report of the operations committee. Mr. Finlay.
So the first item on our agenda from operations committee that we would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation in regard to the addition of girls wrestling IBT state series.
That is made a motion.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion to approve the IBT individual bracket tournament for girls wrestling. Is there a second? Mr. Ward has a second. All right.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Harrison at this point.
Yes, good morning, board. Mr. Finlayson did kind of present the item as written. Just to add, staff will set up region events to allow girls to qualify for the state IBT state tournament. We'll report to the board at the next meeting in November, just kind of giving you an update on the structure.
The big concern from the board previously was to make sure that we studied that from a Title IX perspective. And Mr. Arlen shared with us yesterday that as long as that opportunity is there for girls and isn't limited, that certainly should not be an issue moving forward. It would still be one dual format, just one team, and then the individual would be broken into male and female. The female athletes certainly still have the opportunity to participate in a dual tournament on the co-ed team, for lack of a better term for clarity.
Mr. Arlen, you want to comment on that? I know that was a question of the board at our previous meeting in Title IX.
As we discussed at the committee meeting, as long as there's equal opportunity for girls to participate, I think we're in good shape. Plus, we're also moving forward with something that is kind of an unknown area, and we can tweak it as we need to go along.
Thank you, Mr. Arlen. And with that, we're talking about having girls wrestling in this school year, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's a good thing. I know the board really, in past meeting, after we got through this, I think that was kind of the desire for us to have that ready for this school year. And I know staff has been working on the event in case the board were to approve this today. So can you share with us a little bit about the pre-planning, what's going on in that regard?
Certainly. We actually want to credit staff. We actually, and I say we, it's actually some of our former administrator, our current administrator. We've been in communication with both the Wrestling Advisory Committee to help out with the structure. It would add an additional day to our state championship in March. We've been in touch with our hosts already. They're ready and we're willing to go. We're excited for this chance.
And you have, we're gonna have the map needed and everything that's gonna be, the equipment needed or necessary to take care of.
Yes, sir. It'll already be kind of set up for the event as well. So again, the main change from our end of staff is it would add another day to the event.
All right, I know we have some new board members here with us that weren't a part of the previous discussion on girls wrestling, but I see this as the right move for us. I mean, there was a question as to whether or not we had to have a dual meet for girls wrestling if we did the individual bracket tournament, and we wanted to check that out, which we have as far as Title IX issues. This is going to be an evolution, I think, in a lot of ways, just like it was for boys wrestling. It started with the individual bracket tournament, and then it moved into the duels. We'll see how it goes. There's a big push behind girls wrestling in the state of Florida right now. We start out with the individual tournament for them, a chance to be a state champion. And as the numbers grow, and we can put together dual meets, that I know this board and I know the staff is willing to look at that and make that work. So I think it's a good move. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion to approve girls wrestling, please raise your right hand. And that is a unanimous vote. Thank you, board. Thank you, Mr. Harrison and staff.
Okay, so continuing on with our second item, letter B, increasing cross roster size from 25 to 35 players for state series. I would make a motion on behalf of operations to approve that recommendation.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the lacrosse roster size 35 players. Is there a second? Thank you, sir. Motion and second. Discussion.
I will turn it over to Mr. Harrison.
Thank you again. Yes, board, in your packet, pages 70 and 71, kind of the detailed information and the history of the process of this item. It's increasing the roster allowable size, the maximum allowed for the state series from 25 to 35 players. This did originally originate in the boys lacrosse advisory committee. However, we want to make sure it applies to both boys and girls. I can answer any other questions you might have.
Any questions, board members? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. No one opposed. That motion passes unanimously.
So moving on to our third item, letter C. The lacrosse advisory committee asked for lacrosse regular season to be extended by 1 week. Executive director does not recommend that extension, and the operations committee voted to support that. So we'll make a motion to deny that request from the lacrosse advisory committee.
A motion to deny the request. Is there a second? Second. Gabriel has seconded that motion. All right, discussion.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Harrison.
Yes, thank you again, board. So this, just to kind of give you some information, lacrosse has an 8-week season to play their games. The maximum allowable games for the sport is 18. To qualify for the state series, you must participate in 7. Speaking on behalf of the lacrosse advisory committee, their concern is generally their season has the spring break week during it, and they stated that there are teams that do not play during that time. However, the athletic director advisory committee did not endorse this item. They felt the teams had the opportunity to play the games, and in addition, with the item the board just approved with extra players, we believe that will give the opportunity to play in the games that they were used to play in as opposed to preseason.
Okay. Any questions? So this motion is basically to follow the executive director's recommendation not to extend the season. That's what we're doing. Okay. Seeing any questions, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Very good. Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
So our fourth item, letter D, is in regard to policy 13 and tournament structure for the sports of flag football, boys and girls lacrosse, boys volleyball, boys and girls water polo. There's multiple changes that are impacted by this proposal, but operations would make a motion to approve this recommendation.
All right, we have a motion to approve the recommendation. Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Smith, thank you, sir. Second the motion, discussion.
I will turn it over to Mr. Harrison.
Yes, thank you. Please allow me, what I will do is I will give you the current structure and I will give you the changes, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I'm unclear on explaining. So currently for those sports, you have a required district schedule. They vote to play each other once or twice to see the district tournament at the end of the season. Only the top 4 teams who finished during the season advance to that tournament. And in addition, the district champion advances to the regional bracket of those sports. The change in front of you today, it would remove the requirement to play a 1 or 2 game schedule during the season to seed the tournament. That would still be an option of the schools. It would use the Florida High School Athletic Association rankings to seed said tournament. And it would allow the district champion to advance and also the next 4 teams at large based on your FHSAA ranking to advance to the regional round of the tournament as well. And again, I can go over any specific item or cover anything more in depth.
So if you don't mind going into a little more detail about the fact that it's only been heard once through the advisory committee, so it's being fast-tracked to the board.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So yes, this has been only presented on an agenda item officially once. Last year, with the COVID year, we were kind of, I'll say, pushed as a state. We used the rankings last year to seed the tournament. We did allow, the board did waive at the February meeting. We also allowed all the teams to participate in the district tournament as well. This has been an item that's come up in this committee, in these committees over the past few years, and their interest with the rankings. It does put them in line with the other team sports that have been using the rankings already.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, recommending approval of policy 13 revisions, please raise your right hand. Thank you.
So our 5th action item, letter E, and pages 82 and 83 in your board packet, in regard to policy 6.1.1 and track and field, and the committee would make a motion to approve this recommendation.
Okay, is the motion to approve the recommendation of track and field regular season start finish dates? Is there a second? Board, thank you, sir. We have a motion to second.
And I will turn it over to Mr. Harris.
Thank you again. We are going back, I'll say, to our host, the University of Florida as our host for track and field. Last year with the COVID year, we had to adjust. So the track and field state championships was a week earlier last year based on how we had to adjust. This actually puts it a week later than what it was for last year. So we're asking the season to pick up and shift. It does not add a week to the season. Essentially, it just shifts everything a week later than what was proposed to you for the calendar dates for this, I believe, the June meeting. I can answer any other questions.
how this affects the district meets. I think the only weekend now that we could actually host a district track meet would be during the Easter Passover weekend, which for many schools is impossible. So the challenge for some schools is that hosting a meet during the week is almost impossible because of parking, limited parking and facilities. And I speak for our district, there's 10 schools in our district, but there's only 2 schools that potentially could host that have tracks. So it puts a challenge to find a date, although there's 2 weeks almost offered, that the only weekend is Easter Passover. I think I'm right on that. I could be wrong. My question to you, Justin, is there leniency, is there flexibility with FHSA on those district dates to maybe push it that Saturday before the allowable FHSA dates? Does that make sense?
We could work with any area. I don't know, without seeing it in front of me, we do have to kind of keep in mind going later, pushing it beyond the window. The concern then is determining the people who qualify for the region meet. Off the cuff, I would say we probably want to maybe do it on the front end as opposed to beyond the dates, but Ed and I would be happy to work with schools to come up with a solution.
Thank you.
And so this was an agenda item from staff, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has the ADAC or what's the response been from that lit director?
We did not know this information from the University of Florida before the ADAC meeting. It has not gone in front of the ADAC as an official one.
And go ahead, Mr. Finley.
So a couple points of clarification. First, the sole reason for this is the fact that our host facility for the state series final, this is the dates that we're able to do it, and rather than have any downtime during the playoffs to keep our district, regional, state sequencing something that's positive for athletes, it would be necessary based on that. And also to clarify on your question, I think this helps and relieves that issue. The previous date, the last contest was the 9th. Now, the last contest is the 16th, which is the Saturday between Good Friday and Easter. So that districts would be pushed past that weekend. So that would be a positive in that regard.
So you're saying that the districts could be after Easter?
I'm saying they could not be the week of Easter, if I'm understanding correctly. The last contest is April 16th. Districts would be after that. And Easter is the 17th. We know districts wouldn't be on a Sunday. So it would not be that weekend. So, but I think that's a great point. And moving forward, if we can look at that, if we set those schedules, that is a challenge. I think across all school systems that many public and independent schools take often an extended weekend during that time.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, are there dates for that would help in your district?
Yes, it does help. It's tracks not many schools have. The ones that do, some don't have lights, so that even constrains it more. So having it during the school day is almost impossible. Parking issues and the school day. So thank you, Mr. Finley.
All right, is there any other discussion? Any discussion in regards to this? Okay, seeing none, we're going to vote on the motion to approve the track and field regular season start and finish dates as submitted. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Yes, thank you.
So the other things we also did have a discussion in regard to the strategic plan, which we'll share our input later when it's appropriate on the agenda. Also, in regard to policy 12, we had a good and positive discussion. That's our classification policy. There are some significant adjustments that need to be considered, and Ms. Harrison is working on putting together a work group to help address those concerns, to bring those back to us at another time. But we appreciate the work of the staff which impacts every school, association. And, thank you for your work on all of these, others as well. So that concludes the report of the Governance Committee, unless there's any questions. Yeah. Sorry. Old habits die hard. The Operations Committee, unless there's any questions or discussion in regard to classification policy as well.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Finlayson, and Operations Committee, also Mr. McLean, Mr. Morello, who not able to be with us, but Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Ward. Okay, so we're going to move to item number 6, which is policy 10.3.1 and the request for waiver of minimum contest for fall sports on the turf.
Thank you, President Dodd. It's always a curious thing when there's no name attached to a particular item. And this is an issue that we discussed, this particular topic here. And I know that various committees have touched on this, and I appreciate the work of our committees. I'd like for Mr. Harrison to talk a little bit about this, about our existing requirement that this board has approved for what we did last year, and then going forward, what we have done thus far this year, and then ask for the board for their input relative to that. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you again, board. So this item, as you recall, in policy 10, there is a minimum requirement for both student athletes and for a team to participate in the state series. Last year, as a board, appropriately so, you waived each season of sports, if you will, for both the individual student athlete requirement and for the team requirement. Based on feedback that our staff has gotten as well with this item, working with the athletic director advisory committee that met earlier this month, we feel it would be appropriate for the board to waive those for the fall sports again for this year, both the individual student athlete requirement and the team requirement as well. There was some good discussion on the team requirement portion of it, but overall felt like the administration at each school would make the appropriate decision when it came to, again, teams having to play or to not play based on their health status. So we are, on behalf of staff, supporting this item, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Mr. President, I think it'd be appropriate if we entertained a motion to do that before we have any more lengthy discussion reference to that. So I would entertain a motion that for fall sports, that this board ratify our recommendation to waive the individual and team requirements for the fall 21-22 school year.
You make that for motion, Mr. Chica. All right. Okay, we're good. Yes, we have a motion, and we have a second by Mr. Finlayson. Thank you. And for clarification, we're dealing with fall sports, not dealing with all sports. That is correct. All sports, and if we have to look at it's making a change to our winter sports, we would have time to do that at the November meeting.
Yes, sir, we would. We'll be just kind of beginning the winter sports season at the next meeting. So we'll at least have the tryouts and the practices, and depending on the sport, a week or two of games under our belt to kind of see where we stand. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Curtis.
Harrison, perhaps I'm worried about something that won't even happen, but I can conceive of a problem in the team minimum, specifically in football, with the ranking system. If a team only gets in, I'll say 3 or 4 games. What is the minimum in football for the team?
Right now, the minimum for football to have a ranking is 8 games. Yes, sir.
So under this, if they only played, say, 5 or 6 games, they would still be eligible to compete in the state series.
Yes, sir, they would, and that was, if I may, that was kind of the discussion. AD advisory, also some of our staff met with the county ADs as well, and that was a potential concern. However, we do feel like schools will get hopefully enough games in to have a more accurate ranking or where they should be. As a staff, we cannot promise or guarantee these games. All these games will occur, meaning the more you have, the better your ranking is. Obviously, your RPI is, depending on the sport. As of last Friday in the sport of football, we had about 13 teams who had only reported 2 scores. in. And again, I say scores, they may have played Friday, they didn't put in the score yet potentially. So we do believe that there will be at least 6 to 7 games, hopefully, across the board at least. And we feel that's still the best method to get teams to a playoff type format. Again, not knowing, admittedly so, not knowing if the team does only play 5 games or 6 games, their ranking may not be as accurate as it would be if they played 10.
I'm just gonna speak for myself. I have, I hear what you're saying. I have a great concern for that. I really do. Thanks.
Mr. Finley?
And I think the extreme example is playing 1 or 2 games is even possible within that. I understand the concern as a small school that only schedules 8 games because of the size of our roster, and being able to spread those out over the entire season. We've already lost 1 game because our opponent was quarantined. So it definitely needs to, some action needs to be taken to provide relief for those types of schools. But I do understand the concern that, taking to an extreme, in girls basketball last year, our district champion on the scripts had played, I think, 5 or 6 games for the entire girls basketball season. In those sports, there's a tournament that leads to that. In football, which is your concern, there isn't. So it's certainly a valid concern.
I would just add, my concern is that you're gonna have a school who would not have made the playoffs, only plays 4 or 5 games. Now they're in the playoffs, taking a spot from somebody who played 9 or 10 games. It's a dicey situation because I do see both sides of it. I really do. And I don't think it's as big an issue in the other sports because they can play a lot more games.
Yes.
Justin, I'm just wondering, from last year's waiver that we had in place, do we have any negative impacts from last season in football?
It was hard to tell. We did 2 different things last year for football. Every team that wanted to compete in the playoffs, we were able to put them on like a bracket. We kind of took the back end of the season, for lack of a better phrase, to make sure everyone did get in who chose to get in. I want to be careful. We're not dealing with a different scenario now. There was an attempt this year, going into this year, that it appeared everyone was planning on playing a full season. Then unfortunately July hit. So that's a little bit different than last year. Last year we were unsure across the state when everyone was going to start. So that is one difference from last year to this year. So we do believe at this point in time, based on when that's kind of ramped back up again, this is our best option. Again, the same concern that was brought up. It could happen. I want to give credit to our schools and the district folks here. They are working, if games are called off, to get those games back on the schedule, sell them out. I've even heard games being set up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. So to try to get as many games, I think there is an effort to get as many games under their belt, because I think the schools and the kids, they do want to play, but I cannot deny that.
I know for school boards, this has been an area I've been asked a lot about in reference to, not wanting teams to be penalized and canceled because of, so I know Mr. Curtis, I understand the other side, but to me, I think this is the right thing to do. This is the way to win the contest, like we did last year. And, I asked the questions similar, is there going to be a way to take advantage of this? Honestly, we're trying to do what's best for kids in schools, and school districts, but making decisions that they have to cancel the contest because of 19. That's the decision that's made. I think it's going to be trying to game the system. Mr. Finley.
I do want to offer one further clarification, just so we know what's different about this year versus last year. Last year, everyone who wanted to was able to participate in the playoffs, and that was done by blind draw. this is going to continue to use the ranking system, which last year it was no harm, no foul, everybody's in. This year, by waiving that requirement, somebody could be left out, Mr. Curtis is concerned, that, you know, would have in a full seat, would have made the playoff.
Was there any consideration, or could there be any consideration for just, you know, I'm just talking about the team side of things, not the individual side, for reducing the numbers? So in football, go from 8 to 5 or 6, volleyball, go from whatever it is and reduce it a little. I mean, is that a possibility?
Yes, it is. That was not necessarily brought up. Again, credit to the member schools and the districts. I believe their intent is to play as many games as they can, so I don't think that came forward as maybe cutting it in half or reducing the number, but that was not discussed.
Just saying, in football, there's a difference between playing 6 games and only getting 2 or 3 games.
Yes, sir. And that's why we believe, hopefully, again, you know, halfway through the season, there was 13 as of the weekend who only had 2 scores. Again, that's scores. We don't know if those 13 just haven't put in a score yet. So the remainder of your schools in the state series at least have 3 under their belt at this point.
Other questions? Discussion on this. Okay, so the motion is to waive the minimum contest for fall sports. That is the motion that's on the floor. I'm sorry, yes, for individuals and teams. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please raise the right hand. Okay, all those opposed, same sign.
Mr. Gabriel, your vote was in favor? In favor.
Okay, that motion passes 11-2, and we will waive the minimum contest for individuals and sports and teams for fall sports. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move now to item C, our discussion items, and I'll give it to.
I'll take a couple. Mr. McLean had brought forth a couple of things. Mr. Harrison, you might need to make your way back up here because you were in that group yesterday. Mr. McLean has asked for some discussion and some topics, so we'll let you go ahead at this time. That first one relative to state series policy. And Mr. Harrison will kind of represent the operations committee that you discussed. Thank you.
We'll say we had a great discussion yesterday. We had a great discussion yesterday on some of these things, and one goes on what we just talked about. And in football, in 5 through 8 is the only sport where you still have to play a district contest. And because of hurricanes in Florida, lightning in Florida, COVID in Florida, we have games that are being scheduled, that are being canceled, and district games, and people have to scramble to try to make it up. And football is really the only sport where halfway through the season, you have no chance to go to the playoffs. So I just wanted to start a discussion. Is there a way somehow at the end of the season, you know, I think I brought this up last year, where you take your district and you seed the top 4 teams, and 1 plays 4 and 2 plays 3, and the 2 winners go on as your district representatives. You know, because I know right now in 5 through 8, with the district games that have to be made up, some people have to play 3 games in 7 days. You know, and hopefully COVID's going to go away, but I don't think rain and lightning and hurricanes are ever going to go away. You know, so I know we're talking about reclassification and those types of things, but I just wanted to throw that out there. One of the other things that, and we had a good discussion on all these, is I know in the non-Final Four sports, volleyball, soccer, where we don't have a Final Four, we want the 4 best teams to be reseeded. But I just want to make sure everybody understands, for example, you know, because of geography of Florida. For example, in volleyball, you could have a team from Pensacola, and their regional final has to travel to St. Augustine, which is probably a 4 or 5 hour trip, okay, and then back. And then on the draw, they have to go to Miami for the state semifinal and back. And then for the state final, if they win, they have to go to Fort Myers for the final. So that's a lot of travel, that's a lot of expenses for a sport where you don't get a whole lot of gate to help with those expenses. So that would be volleyball and soccer. I know the whole thing is we want the 4 best teams to end up in the finals with the 2 best teams. So that's just something to think about, you know. Fortunately, we're in Central Florida, so we may not have to do that, Pensacola to Miami with that. Then the other thing is, you know, I got some inquiries about the max prep ratings. And, you know, last year in our county, we all had to play only in-county games against each other. And when it came out, the strength of schedules were like all over the place. And people were like, wait a minute, we all played each other. How can our strength of schedules be that much difference in the better teams? And the other thing on the max prep ratings, and one of the gentlemen yesterday brought it up, is nobody understands it. And because nobody understands it and nobody can figure it out, there's always confusion. Okay, I think Lance brought it up. As long as they can go down and they can figure out and say, yeah, this is where I fall. But we all know that the max preps rating is proprietary, is that the correct term? So nobody knows how they figure it out. And, you know, I know there was a lot written this week about the first max preps ratings that came out in football. And I know that's early season. So those are, you know, some of the major things I just want to talk about. Somebody, maybe Justin can throw some things in there.
Well, I think those are good. Like mentioned, we did talk about many of these in the committee meeting. As a member of staff, we're happy to bring any of these items to any of the committees to kind of do further talks. I also reached out and said, you know, if any specific school had a question, we're happy to answer the best we can. So we're here to listen.
Okay, would any of our board members like to have any other discussion? And this is a discussion item. You board members, the new board members, you know, you can't place items of discussion on the agenda. This is not an action item, so we're not taking any vote on these items. But if there is discussion or ideas on any of these topics that Mr. McLean has brought up, now would be the time to discuss that. Is there anything? Any questions for Jeff? Okay, Mr. McLean, is there anything else that you would like?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, our next discussion item is bylaw 4.3.2 on page 81 of your packet. That's all. Is that yours? I also missed my. I think that's on the assessment costs.
Okay, all right. Mrs. O'Tara, prior to her departure, did ask a question about, I wanted to put some discussion on there about membership dues, and we did a little history of that. You might know, and as a high school principal many, many years ago, I remember when dues to the association were essentially 50 cents per student that was in grades 9 through 12. And so if you had a membership, a school membership of 1,000 students, your dues would be $500 plus whatever legal fees might be out there. If you had 2,000 students in your school, the membership dues to the FHSAA would be $1,000 plus any other fees that might transpire. Over the course of about almost 2 decades, initially going back about 20 years, that generated approximately $400,000 in dues that went to each year from a member school to the association. Over the course of almost 20 years, 15 years, excuse me, the dues were, I guess, reduced somewhat. There was a time when the executive director was given the authority to reduce them by 50% over that. And then in 14 and 15, the dues were actually changed to a total of $25 This echoes, I think, essentially what Mrs. Waters and many of you were complimenting us on earlier, complimenting the association on, that's the growth of our sponsorships, to be able to fund the association. So now, member dues are $25 per year. And then after that, a number of years ago, this board approved the opportunity for member schools to declare a 5-year membership and pay $100 upfront for a 5-year membership, essentially saving $5 a year or $25 over that course of time. And there was a question about that because I think some of our member schools have received a bill this year for $100 for membership dues. Well, those schools have forgotten that the past 4 years, they haven't paid any dues at all. And the previous 5 years, they had paid $100 for that ensuing 5 years. So that clarification, we'll continue to look at our membership dues. Member schools are also required to have membership in the FHSAA, and we handle those fees here for the FHSAA and do the bookkeeping for that, collect those dues, and then send those dues to the FHSAA on behalf of our member schools. So I believe, unless there's any other questions about that, that's a little bit of a history on that. And I'd be happy to address any questions you might have.
Are there any questions in regards to this item of discussion? Okay, thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right. We're gonna move on now to item H, report of legal counsel. Mr. Ireland.
President, members of the board, I'm gonna take a little bit longer today on some of these for the benefit of the new board members here. The first case that we're involved with is Cambridge Christian. It's a case that arose out of an incident with the 2015 state playoff game. Two Christian schools were playing each other and asked if the pre-game meeting to be able to have a prayer over the PA system at the Camping World Center. We said, no, you cannot do that. You may pray at halftime on the field, wherever you want to pray, but we're not going to allow the use of the PA system because it has restrictions in our policy. They filed suit against the association. Initially, the court in federal court, Middle District of Florida, the federal court down there to dismiss the action to start off with. They went to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal. 11th Circuit Court of Appeal said basically you pull the plug too quick, go back and finish work. So we have now briefed and both sides filed motion for summary judgment, and the court has that under advisement at this point in time. The case is on the docket for trial beginning the first week of November, but I don't know that it will hold that trial position until unless the court makes a decision on the motion for summary judgment sooner. The next two cases that we're involved with are personal injury cases. One is the Ashbury case in Polk County. In both of these cases, the insurance company is paying our fee for the stint and will pay any judgment. Ashbury is a case where a young lady was injured in a softball game. She filed suit against the school, which I would call it one of the public schools down there, and also the field with the charter school, with the two schools playing. Filed suit against the Referees Association, Umpires Association, and against the association. All of us filed motions for summary judgment based on the release that the young lady and her mother signed. We argued that last Tuesday. The judge has the motion for summary judgment under advisement as far as the release is concerned. The association has two more defenses that we claim in our motion for summary judgment. That she'll take up later if she doesn't grant the motions for summary judgment. The next case is Twilight Cotton in Clay County. Ms. Cotton was at the cheerleading competition to watch her granddaughter participate. She came down the bleachers and fell and contends that the bleachers weren't fully extended. We filed a motion for summary judgment in that case also, which the court denied for reasons I still don't understand. But in any event, we have an indemnity agreement with the school, so we should be in good shape with that. We do have a trying to set mediation. That's the cases that we have for, but Mowbray, I won't give you this in writing. I don't have it for you now, but I'll give it to you in writing. The of the receipt of impermissible benefits. He went to the section appeals committee, they denied his appeal, and rather than coming to the board, he filed a lawsuit against us in Palm Beach County. We filed a motion to dismiss for failure to exercise its administrative remedies. Before that could be heard by the court, the matter was mediated and the case was voluntarily dismissed after mediation. The final case is D-Period versus DeSantis. The case challenging the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. We were joined as a defendant with Governor DeSantis, with the Broward County School Board, the Commission of Education, and I think Commissioner Cochran individually. After the suit was filed, I contacted talked to Mr. Common and contacted the plaintiff's attorneys and said, basically, we will follow the law. There's no need to drag us through this. This is a fight we don't have a dog in, and please let us out. They said, thank you for your concern, but we want you in. So the court required all of the parties to file one combined motion, which has been filed. Basically, the motion is dismissed. Our motion is based on the fact that we follow the law and we're bound by the law. So whatever the court decides. Plus, this student is a ninth grade student, isn't in high school. The school that the student would attend, I believe, is not a member of the association. So that's where that is. Unless you have any questions, that ends the cases that we have. I did tell you yesterday that I would check on Robert's Rules of Order regarding the amendment, that I did, and what we did was right. There's a provision in Robert's Rules of Order that you can have a primary and a secondary amendment, you can have a tertiary amendment, so the action that you took was proper. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Ives? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to item I, the report of our executive director, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be as brief as I can and go as fast as I possibly can. You know that already our fall sport championships will be coming up very soon, and I would like to encourage you as board members to attend if possible. Bowling on November 2nd to the 4th, swimming and diving 2 different weekends, November 5, 6, and 12 and 13. Golf has 3 different 2-day events, November 9th and 10th, 12th and 13th, 16th and 17th. Cross country, a 1-day event in Tallahassee on November 12th. Volleyball, November 17th and 18th. Football, 2 different weekends, December 9th through 11th and 16th through 18th. The various sport administrators and Carlene or your contact on those attending those events. We'd love to take care of you. We'd love to take care of your travel and your hotel accommodations if those are needed. This past summer, just a compliment to those of you who were able to attend the National Federation of High School Meeting. Florida hosted that in Orlando. Many of you had the opportunity to attend, and I thank you for that. We are still getting compliments, even though we didn't do a whole lot. The National Federation does that. We'll certainly take all the compliments we can get. 4 of our staff members recently attended the Section 3 fall meeting of the National Federation in Baton Rouge. It was a very scaled down version. However, we were happy to be there. It was a well attended from some other states. Certainly a worthwhile meeting for us. And that again, Section 3 is essentially the southeastern states of the United States. As you requested last spring, our lobbying team will be returning to us and visiting us at our November board meeting to discuss potential or established legislation dealing with or impacting our association. We haven't made the final determination whether that's going to be on Sunday, the 13th of November, or Monday. They have a busy time of that year, and we look forward to their presentation before us. President Dodd asked me to mention NIL, or name, image, and likeness issue. I know some of our committees discussed this yesterday, and it's a hot topic around our state. We did receive a few inquiries about this after the Supreme Court ruled that the NCAA must give the opportunity to college athletes, post-secondary athletes, the opportunity to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness for monetary reasons. We had some questions from our membership. However, we quickly reminded our membership of amateur status. And it it's in one of our bylaws. Essentially, there are four things that deal with compensation. A student athlete would forfeit their amateur status if they competed for money, if they received an award or prize money that we had not previously approved, and we're very sketchy and skimpy on approval of those things. Capitalizing on athletic fame by receiving gifts or money, or signing a professional playing contract. And as soon as we sent that out to our membership, the calls and inquiries stopped coming in. I do know this was a topic at our operations meeting yesterday. We do see that there will be developments over time, whether it's 1, 2, or 10 years. We do see some development with this. There are a couple of, there's one state that has made some provision. I don't know exactly what that provision is for high school students to capitalize on NIL, and that is in California. And I did speak with the executive director in New York, and they were making a proposal of some sort of way for a high school student to capitalize on that. So we're echoing what the National Federation continues to say, and you have said individually and collectively that we're an education-based athlete, an athletic organization. So let's take that education first and foremost. And so at this moment in time, NIL does not impact us directly. This past summer, we again hosted our compliance seminar in a virtual format. This is the second year in a row. We're disappointed that our staff did not get to travel to different parts of the state. However, the benefit of doing the compliance seminar in a virtual format is, in addition to those schools that are required to have representation at the compliance seminar, the compliance seminar materials remain on our website, and anyone can access those at any point in time. And we can refer people to those. Hey, check this out. It's very, very good education for our coaches and athletic directors. It's already been announced, I believe, that our annual financial audit begins today. It lasts about 2 to 3 weeks, and there will be a report for your benefit in the November meeting. This past summer, some of you actually are aware of this. We just hosted our 4th annual Student Leadership Conference. Unfortunately, for the second year in a row, we did this virtually, and attendance had diminished a great deal. We're disappointed in that. And we long for the opportunity to have an in-person meeting when we would have 125 to 150 students participate in that leadership conference. And we're certainly planning on doing that in the future. President Dodd also asked me to mention something about our pitch count policy. You'll recall that last spring we had a pitch count issue that ended up in court. And so a little bit of a history there. Yes, we do have a pitch count policy. It is very precise. It is appropriately strict in nature. It deals with the age of the baseball pitcher, as well as the number of pitches that person is allowed to pitch in a game situation, and a number of required days of rest. The policy itself that you have approved is based on the safety of student athletes. And safety is the paramount issue that drove this whole concept. Our coaches appreciate it. I know they do. They've told me this. They tell our baseball advisory committee that they enjoy this and they embrace this whole concept. Most of our other state associations in the NFHS also have pitch count policies. Ours may be a little more strict than other states, but again, our coaches have supported this wholeheartedly. Again, our position and our policy was developed over time. We followed the committee structure that you were following, and all of our association continues to follow. It made its way through various advisory committees and finally was approved by the board. There is some concern over the accuracy of counting those pitches. What is a pitch? Foul ball? Who counts? When do you verify? Those kind of things. And how any violation might be reported or handled. That's the issue right now. Currently, our ADAC is discussing this issue. It's also been referred back to our baseball advisory committee for discussion. There is no change being proposed to you at this point in time. I appreciate the work of the ADAC and the baseball committee working with our operations department as we work through this. We do have, as was announced yesterday, a board of directors vacancy. Your bylaw 4.7.2 specifically states that if there is a vacancy in an elected position, that the board of directors approves any replacement for that. I just found out about this particular item specifically on Friday, or officially on Friday, even though I was aware that it might happen. And what will transpire now is that I will work with staff, and that our executive director and our team will make a recommendation to the board at some point in time in the very near future. And we will look at the requirements for that individual from the geography standpoint, and what position this FHSAA representative falls into. In order for this individual, and policy also addresses that the individual would serve for the balance of the unexpired term. So it'll be only for the balance of this year. President Dodd and I have discussed, we'd like to get this person on board as soon as possible. So if we waited until the November meeting to approve the individual, then they could only participate in 3 meetings. There is a possibility that when I have the opportunity to do the appropriate research, to make a recommendation to Mr. Dodd to ask that you join us for a brief Zoom or virtual meeting, so we can approve that individual or any other discussion you might have, so that individual can participate in our next board meeting officially. If you haven't noticed, real quickly, you do have a $2 million asset that you're sitting in right now. We did some building maintenance over the summer. We did a lot of power washing from the roof to the walls, and also the sidewalks. The sidewalks are getting a little slippery outside. I hope you noticed that. We've cleaned the carpet and the tile throughout, and we're taking care of your particular big asset here, I think, in an appropriate fashion. Brandy has asked me to remind everyone to fill out your travel vouchers, and I see them. You can get those travel vouchers to Brandy or to Carlene before you leave today. And also in the line of job security, we also all like our job security, and we like the idea of future athletes coming around. We have a new baby in the house. Marley Rain Harrison, daughter of Justin and Kelly Harrison, is just over 3 months old. She'll be entering 9th grade in the very near future. We'll begin to count her eligibility at that time, Mr. Harrison. Thank you for your service to this board. You do an important job. Travel safely on your way home today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right, we'll move to item J, which is the report of the president. I'm excited for the year that we have in front of us. We have a lot of work to do, obviously, but we have 6 new board members that are with us, and we welcome you all. Charlie Morello was not able to be here today from Niceville, Florida, but we have 5 of our other members here, and I would like us I'd like to give you a chance as new board members just to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background. So we're going to start over here with Allison.
I am Allison Forsyth Abney. I am the athletic director at Untitled Christian Academy. Previously, I sat on our ADAC board here, as well as section appeals with Mr. Hartman at my section.
My name is Ralph Arza. I'm a former teacher from Miami, Dade County Schools football coach for about 10 years, legislator, and I own my own consulting business.
Marcus Gabriel, athletic director from American Senior High School. I've been on the FHSAA Sectional Appeals Committee, EAC, representative assembly. Currently, I am the president-elect for the
Brian Smith, I represent Section 4 private schools. I'm the athletic director at the Benjamin School. I've been there for about 20 years, and previously I've served on representative assembly. Thank you.
From the board, I am currently the head boys basketball coach at Florida High, and I've been on the basketball advisory committee. And I was a head football coach at Bookie, Washington, and Pensacola for about 4 years. And thank you for having an opportunity to serve.
welcome. We look forward to working together as a team here, and they did an orientation yesterday morning. Came an hour and a half early for that. Appreciate it. We had a good chance to talk about the duties of the board and meet some staff and just kind of tour the building, just kind of see things. So that worked very well. And thank you, Mr. Thomas, for setting all that up. So yesterday, I read a letter from Lauren Otero, and I know there's many in the room that weren't here yesterday, but Lauren Otero has taken a new position with Hillsborough County Schools, and she's no longer housed at the school where she was as an athletic director. And she has a new role as project administrator in the operations division, overseeing sports facility related capital projects. So we wish Lauren the best, and you heard Mr. Tomlin obviously talk about how we're going to make that replacement. So board members be aware, we don't want to call a lot of extra meetings, but on occasion like this, that would be a necessary thing to get that on board for the November meeting. Wonderful program last night. Thank you, staff. Man, it's so great to see the quality of the people we have that coach and referee and work with our student athletes. And it was a nice event last night, so thank you for that. And as you all know, Mr. Tomlin has announced his retirement for the end of the school year, and we're saddened by that, but we understand. But thank you for the time that we're going to have to hire a qualified replacement. There will be a process here. I do want to advise the board that I have set up an executive director search committee made up of Mr. Curtis, Mr. Thomas, Dr. Longshore, and Mr. Finlayson, and myself. And we will be meeting in the public, so we will notice our meetings, but we will discuss the timeline and the process that we're going to put in place to interview potential candidates. I want the board to know that the interviews will be done by this board as has been past practices, but the search committee will be reviewing. We'll set the process for that. I don't want to talk too much about how that works. We'll decide as a committee how we're going to do that to bring candidates for the board. But we're work with Ms. Waters. Thank you, Brandy, as she set up. We've got a timeline. I've already started working at this, looking at some timelines. And we'll obviously have some more information to share with you at our November meeting. And then we have the information item. That was just item L. We did talk about strategic planning committee. I talked with Mr. Tomlin after we went to the committee meetings yesterday in regards to our strategic plan and how we're going to go about this. And I know his staff has a lot of information from the committee meetings. And we have talked again with how this is going to look with a mission statement. We want to revise that, how extensive we want our strategic plan committee to be. If it would be both members of this board and other stakeholders. But we have a lot to talk about. So I don't want to spend a lot of time here today with that, but I would entertain any comments now in regards to the direction of this board and the development of the strategic plan. Would anyone like to share their thoughts on that? And if so, this is the time to do it. Okay.
So I think we've had a conversation, and I know I've spoken with Mr. Tomlin about it. I think that a strategic plan is an important thing for a board to engage in. And I think that there's a process, and I think it takes time, especially for a board that meets 5 times a year. So typically you would put together a mission statement and a vision statement, and then you would decide what your values are. And then you would go to the committees, and the committees would determine what the goals are for each of the areas of operation. You did say yesterday, Mr. President, that you don't want this to be an accountability tool, and I agree with you entirely. Many of us are familiar with public school district strategic plans, and those are accountability measures. But a 501(c)(3) is going to have a different kind of strategic plan, and that would be more a matter of just sort of putting guardrails in place to guide the work of the board and the association. So we could, look at those questions that were asked at committee meetings yesterday and get some answers and slap the name strategic plan on it, or we can go through the real process, which, as I mentioned to you, could be 18 to 24 months, depending on, depending on how frequently we meet and how much work. But I mean, it's going to require some work I'm not afraid to do, but I don't want to be the only one that wants to do it. So those are my comments.
So certainly it is a lot of work and a lot of effort that we as an entire board need to own if we're going to go in this direction. The operations committee feels like the strategic plan is a positive direction for us to move in. Understanding that this board traditionally has been a very strategic thinking board, but it's nice to have that vision for the future. But also in terms of any specific input, our discussion centered around giving us the time between this month's meeting and the meeting in November to try to devise thoughts and come up with ideas of things from an operations perspective that we felt like would be crucial to include.
Yes, the governance committee, we did actually have a discussion about whether this was necessary or not. I think in the end, as a group, we decided it was. I know Mr. Thomas, I thought made an excellent point. This is a real opportunity for everyone on the board to speak out about where we need to go strategy-wise. Our discussions were very general. One thing that did come up was that usually in strategic plans on this level that someone is brought in from the outside to help facilitate. Just bring that up as a point that was made. In terms of the finance and business side, we thought that the house was in great shape. Obviously, we talked about that earlier. We talked a little bit about, we started a discussion of having a separate foundation that could help with special needs. And I know the pandemic kind of stalled that out. But there was a discussion on minority opportunities and coaching and officials, anything we could do to help that happen. On the governance and compliance side, we talked about legislative affairs being very important. I'm happy to hear that our lobbyists will be here again in November. And there was a comment too that maybe the strategic plan should be a representation of our pitfalls and where we are not meeting the mark, and then how can we attack that? So those were our general comments.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very good input. Any other comments from any other board members? I think it's clear, Mr. Thomas, that the board wants to move in the direction of the strategic plan, and I hope that your staff has received information too from those committee meetings and from the input that we have here on. We can work on coming up with a plan on how we're going to proceed. I think it would be wise to review the mission of the association and see if we want to revise that and discuss the extent for our strategic planning. I agree that it is something that's going to take time. It's going to be developed, and it should be a plan that's living, breathing document that say that's going to make a change, but it would be reviewed. It would be something that the board would want to, continually look over and change as needed. So I will discuss more with you, Mr. Thomas, and Ms. Waters and other staff, and we'll come up with a plan and for the November meeting. Are you good with that? Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, very good. And the last thing I had, just again, I appreciate the work of our executive director and staff, the customer service that we still need to continually strive after as we deal with questions and concerns that come before the association in with athletics. So appreciate the work that our staff and Tommy does. The next item is our board of directors comments, and we're going to start right over here with Mr. Curtis and work our way around the room. But this is a chance for all of you to make any final comments about the meeting or anything that you want to talk about in the future. This is your opportunity.
I'll be very brief today. I just want to welcome all our new members. Really look forward to working with each of you. I think you'll find this a very collegial board that gets along wonderfully, even when we disagree. I know it wasn't a hot button issue, but just as an example, I made my points on the rankings and the minimum requirements for teams. And it was on the wrong side of a rather lopsided vote, but I certainly respect everyone. And in the end, I was with the Heisman Trophy winner on my vote. So seriously, welcome to all of you, and really look forward to working with you. Thank you.
So it is sad when board members roll off, but it's also exciting to see new faces at the table. So welcome to everybody. I do have to say that I love the new website. Completely and totally love it. It's my understanding that Jamie Moore led that effort with her staff, include Nadia, Chanel, Ashton, and J.A. Did I miss anybody? That's good. Okay. It was a group effort. It was really good. I used to launch that website to be frustrated, and now it's visually pleasing and easy to navigate. So I'm grateful for that. And I also want to recognize Ashton from last night. So I would assume that, well, I assume that being named into the Hall of Fame is like the pinnacle of someone's career, especially if you're working with high school kids. And Ashton, I just got the sense that you made the process even more enjoyable and exciting and meaningful to so many of the people that received their award last night, because they actually mentioned you in their comments. So after a lifetime of athletic coaching or officiating or whatever, Ashton, with whom they had, I don't know how many contacts, but certainly a short period of time, you make it into their comments about their lifelong career. So that's a real, I think, credit to you, and really indicative of what staff does on a daily basis for our kids and for our schools. So being on this board continues to be my favorite part of being a school board member, and those are my comments. Thank you.
So I do want to thank lots of folks. Mr. Tomlin, as we begin to approach your retirement, thank you very much for your dedicated efforts and leading our association in such a positive way through some challenging times. You certainly deserve a lot of credit to you and your staff. And thank you to staff for your great customer service when technology issues arise, and making sure that all board members are able to be productive. Appreciate that support. And Mr. Ireland, again, thank you for your legal wisdom and guidance at all times. It is a huge blessing and benefit that we often overlook, but it is something that is extremely valuable to our association. I'm excited as well about our new board members and the opportunity to work together. Thank you again to Ms. Rohr for continuing to facilitate our FCA devotions on Sunday. I think that's a very valuable time for those of us who are not able to have our normal Sunday routines. We almost had a quorum yesterday, and I would say that's very exciting for me personally. Last night was an awesome event, and just an opportunity to think about the impact that coaches and officials have on young people throughout our state. And so I want to share some encouraging thoughts from my perspective. I had the opportunity this weekend to see a movie, and I'll give a shameless plug for Show Me the Father. It's a great opportunity to be reminded of the importance of impact that we have. And we as a board and staff as well, we don't necessarily have a direct association with student athletes in this role, but we set up people to be able to impact them in extremely positive ways. And as we saw last night, those opportunities for impact can change lives in ways that we can't even imagine. So understand the work that we do here is important. It's crucial and it is impacting lives in a big way, and sometimes, thankfully for all of eternity as well. So thank you for that. Also, I would like to echo, Executive Director, you've done a real good job. And one of the things that impressed me the most is your team approach. It's always team. It's always team. As I listened last night to some of the coaches, one of the gentlemen said, he talked about the 6th man and the 12th man probably never scored in the game. When you have a team, when you win, the team. And so I echo your leadership and having a team that's working around you. And congratulations to you, Mr. President. This is your first meeting, am I correct, as president? So congratulations to you. And to all of our board members, I am excited about being here for another term. To the new board members, I promise you, you will enjoy this board. I was told that last year when I first came aboard. And after a few months, I realized the importance of just having a team. So to your staff, I can't say, I just can't. Team effort, always an example of the executive director. So I welcome you and safe travel. This hour, I didn't forget you. You're part of the team.
Thank you, and I, like everyone else, just have great gratitude for the people that are in this room and the staff that are a part of this organization. You know, sometimes we look at organizations today, and the most successful ones are those that are collaborative and they work together, and you see that here. You see people working side by side, supporting each other, and that's makes such a difference to the success of the organization. And it means, you know, when you're talking about strategic planning, it means there's a great future ahead, that you're forward thinking, and that this organization and the leadership of it is forward thinking, and that's great for our kids. I have to mention, like everyone else did last night, I think that, you know, we're in a world like so many people, there's such division, political and social division. There's such hardship for hiring people and finding people. But when you hear the stories of individual coaches or officials or wherever their role was, administrators in athletics, that have made commitments over their entire career, and many times the same school, or to the same school system. You know, we talk about that the folks we hire today, I hope I have them for 5 years before they go somewhere else. But those individuals have impacted, you know, I've known Danny Green for a long period of time, coached against him, and a couple of others. So it's just a great opportunity for me and others just to sit there. I know you did too, just be reflective about what you've done and what you can do going forward, because you know, I love as it ends the night, and Coach Yancey talks about the best team he put together was his family, and that was inspiring, I think, to all of us, because any of us that are involved in athletics know that you spend an incredible amount of hours away from that family, and just the recognition of that, I think, was so important. Mr. John, thank you for your leadership taking forward, Mr. Tomlin, for being the important leader that you are in this organization. Thank you.
Want to begin by saying thank you to not only the association, but to the other board members here. Being a new board member, I wanted to come into this meeting with a head ready to work and ready to put my boots on the ground, but at the same time observe and take in and take as much information back as possible to be an active member of this board of directors. I do not want to sit in this seat and not be a board of director. That is active. It is vital for all of us. So I do look forward to that. I do appreciate everybody, not only on the staff, but board of directors new and previous, our president, as well as our president-elect, for helping in that direction. I am very thankful for Mr. Dodd and for Mr. Tomlin in setting our new board members orientation yesterday. That was very vital coming in. And yes, we had to hear a little bit earlier than everybody else, but it was very beneficial for us. I can say, sitting there, hearing, understanding, making sure we were aware of everything, making sure we were prepared with the Sunshine Law with Mr. Ireland and covering all of those bases. So I'm very thankful for that. I do look forward to each meeting. I'm excited to continue to work with each one of you. I am very thankful for last night's Hall of Fame ceremony that, as Mr. Forson said, we do not see that form of dedication right now. Many people are trying to find employees or staff members, and to hear those people dedicate that time is incredible. And I hope that each one of us in this room are able to do the same thing, not only to our schools and our areas, but to this association as well. So thank you very much. I look forward to working with you all.
First of all, my first meeting, and I want to congratulate your staff, executive director. Everything was timely, everything was very well prepared, and everything you put together yesterday and today, very professional. I wanted to mention a couple of things. On the image and likeness issue that you brought up, is it possible for teams to benefit? And you can give me this information later. Like, could a certain high school be recognized, and whatever funds are generated would go to that high school's athletic program?
I can find out some information for you about that.
Okay. Two, on the process of the replacing the member, just want to make sure that the locals are included in that. I would know a little bit more about that process. I don't need to know it now, Mr. Chairman, but maybe to the executive director.
It will, the replacement will come from that section.
Yes, there is a public school FHSAA representative from section 3, geographically Hillsborough, Tampa, Pinellas County down the west coast. And it will be a public school FHSAA representative from that area.
Okay. And will the members in that area be notified if there is an opening and they can apply for it? There'll be a process to apply.
We haven't even actually established exactly what process I'm going to use yet to come up with that recommendation to the board.
Okay. Number 3 was, we discussed yesterday that the evaluation of officials to make sure that we can track incidents. Just a suggestion that there be some sort of background on officials when incidents take place. And then the last thing for the process for the ED, that process be delineated out clearly. I guess before the next board meeting or the next board
The
meeting?
committee will meet before the next board meeting, most likely via Zoom. Well, it is planned to be a Zoom meeting for the committee, and we will have information to present at the next board meeting.
Information.
Timeline, a recommendation on posting of the position, those types of things.
And then the committee meeting that you're having, other members can participate, right?
Well,
It's a public meeting. It's a public meeting.
It'll be, talk about this, it will be in the sunshine, so, if we have a Zoom meeting, can you explain a little bit how we're gonna do that?
About technology. The meeting will be open to the public. And so it can have public input.
So other members can join the call.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure that to get that out, so you'll know when the discussion.
I just want to keep it short, but just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here. The amount of welcome that I felt yesterday was very, very enormous. Not only from people on staff that I knew and people that I didn't know just came up to me and said, hey, who are you? You know, where are you coming from? I'm so-and-so. This is my title. And that kind of like, you know, in Miami, that doesn't happen. So I get to say, you know, I was very welcome. I felt very welcome, and I also, everything that took place from our orientation meeting, the meetings, last night, the award ceremony, today, everything was very, very professional. Everyone has been in place, not, no one, gotta wait 5 minutes for this person, that person. So, I'm glad that this is a very professional, group. And, I just hope that I can add as much as I can, learn as much as I can, and just continue to serve not only, Miami County, but the state of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll sound a little repetitive here, but I think it's warranted. If there's an opportunity to speak, I want to thank the board as a whole. As Marcus referred to, it's just been, I've served on enough committees, enough boards, the welcome, the training, and everything goes back to last week. The Zoom training we got has been outstanding. I appreciate your leadership, Mr. Dara, on that. Mr. Tomlin and staff, A+, what you've done, welcoming us and getting us ready for this role. Commend you all last school year. There were a lot of tough decisions that had to be made by the board, the previous board, and I didn't necessarily agree at the time with some of them, but it worked out pretty darn well for the state. So I appreciate that and commend you all on what you were able to do, and sitting on the finance committee and seeing the shape we are in financially. It's very good. Last night, I know it was mentioned, but you know, we stayed until the end, and it was an incredible evening of 2 classes. I think it reaffirms the value and importance of high school athletics. And you continue to say education-based athletics, 16 individuals who gave a lifetime of service, as it was mentioned before, and they don't do it for the money. Nobody's getting rich, reffing, coaching, working in high school athletics. They're doing it because they love the kids, love the sport, love the schools they work with. So that was really, it helps you when you're having a bad day to see people like that, what they've done. My personal goal is to remember the people in the trenches as I work on this board, the coaches, the student athletes, the athletic directors that are actually the ones out in the field, of course, the pool, and remember how our decisions will impact them. As I am an athletic director, our decisions do impact me personally, so that's an important part, is to not forget that. So I look forward to serving and look forward to the next 3 years and maybe more. Thank you.
I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be on the board. And Mr. Thomas, your leadership has been amazing, great. And I appreciate you and your staff for all the work. It's great to be able to put names with faces, even though sometimes, you know, the mask is a little different. But it was great to be able to put names with faces. I know over Zoom, we were all kind of there, but it's great to see all the board members as well. And I just thank you for your organization. I mean, accommodations were great, orientation was great, and so I'm grateful that I had that opportunity. I'd like to thank the community, your county ADs, and the media for being here as well. And Lynn and Derek, voices to another operations committee was very helpful with them speaking up in those meetings. That was very, very beneficial. Congratulations to the new Hall of Famers, and also a great job to the staff. I appreciate the Hall of Fame because I got an opportunity to see one of my former teammates and his dad, James Cody. So I was grateful for that opportunity to see my teammate. And my last thing is, I just want to keep everybody on your forefront that we're going to be talking about shot clocks at some point in time. So we're going to make it happen, and we're not just going to leave it out there. We're going to work to try to make sure that we make it beneficial for everyone. So that is my challenge to me and everyone else, that we're going to do our best to make sure that we make it beneficial for
again, want to echo, welcome to the new members. We got a lot of new faces. You're gonna really enjoy being part of this board. We do a lot of important things, a lot of good things. We have great leadership from the staff. First of all, I want to say that I'm very disappointed and sorry and apologize for missing what I hear was a fabulous meeting last night. Something came up and I think it was my loss from what I hear. I'm sure it was a great thing. But again, we got a lot of important things to do and welcome everybody. 50 years ago in 1971, I played my first FHSAA sport at Claremont High School. So the FHSAA has been going strong and will keep going strong because of the staff and people like that. And then I want to end with congratulations to Justin. From somebody whose first child was a girl, there's something special about daddy's little girl.
Well, Marcus, I want to tell you, in Highlands County, it's pretty typical to find who the new person is in the room and figure out who they are. So you're welcome to come to Highlands County anytime in a rural environment. And Charlie, if I go home without a picture of you, I can't go home to my Florida State family. That is for absolutely sure. But I just want to welcome the new board members. It's wonderful to have some new folks join us in our work. It's great to serve on this board. And last night, we did the beautiful demonstration of what is right in our community, and it was just a wonderful experience. My very first time to go to something of that magnitude, and your team to put together that doesn't come easily, I'm sure, to put together something of that nature. But it really was a beautiful demonstration, and just to see the families and the pride that they had for parents or spouses or dads or granddads was pretty amazing. I got to sit right behind the gentleman that had the family of 10 children, and you could see them just glowing, and he was quite emotional as he was going in and out. I kept thinking he must be the recipient as he continued to pace a little bit, waiting to that very last one, the last one to go. And it was really a lovely event. So thank you so much for all of that. And staff, thank you so much for helping us navigate through this financial issues that we have had through COVID and the pandemic. And what a beautiful job we have done to help us really land on our feet. I think a year ago we were wondering what in the world was going to happen, but you were so proactive and so strategic, and you just did a magnificent job. So thank you, George, and our president, and all of the staff. It's fabulous job.
All right, thank you, board members, for those great comments. If you'll notice on your, on the agenda, it does have our meeting scheduled for the remainder of this school year on that, and just take note. And we'll see you again November 14th to 15th.